Okay, I think we're live now. All right, everybody. So we had a pretty good session just now, Lighting on the Web with Renee and Roland. We were discussing the different options for infrastructure and the backend of your Lightning applications, and they're working on a project called LightSats, and it was really great to for them to share with the community what they were working on and how they were solving some of the problems. They use LN bits and a voltage node, and it was a pretty quick setup. That was pretty cool. Now we're gonna be having Bumi, and Bumi is working. He's a founder and developer of Albi. It's a browser extension that enables payments on the web. What's really cool, uses some stuff called WebLN or WebBTC, and it provides some really cool interactions. But another part that the Albi project is doing a lot of work in is this value for value payments and stuff, right? So Bumi is going to be talking about this topic, value for value payments and streaming for Podcast 2.0 and how it gets monetized with Lightning Network. So I'm going to invite him up now, and there he is. Hey, Bumi.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I haven't seen you for a while. It's been a few months since the last conference.
It's been a while. Yeah, actually, I'm currently at Lightning Halloween here in Italy at a bit of a Lightning conference. Super cool setup with Fulgur Ventures, and yeah, looking forward to have the session with you here now.
Was it a very spooky hackathon?
It's very spooky.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, I didn't get to attend, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're
But
missed here.
hopefully the next one. All right, so Bumi, I hope I did the introduction correct of you. If not, you could talk a little bit about yourself. You could talk about Albi, and then get into this whole value for value podcasting stuff that you're gonna share with us today.
Awesome. Super cool. One quick question, actually,
Sure.
because I don't see the chat or so. So for everybody who have questions, post it in the chat, or you let me know, Chance.
I will. Not a problem.
And
I'll be on the
yeah.
backstage for a little bit, so you'll have center stage. But when questions come up, I will just add them and give you a little ping.
Okay, cool. And this is actually one thing that we didn't test before.
Sharing the screen, yes, we can
Sharing
do
the screen. Let's see how that goes. So let me
Yeah,
know. Do you see my screen?
there it is. There it is.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
you see, Ed has allowed me to host these calls today, and well, last time he took a break, the entire server went offline. So, so I over the
Okay,
weekend.
challenge accepted. Let's see if we can do that again.
No. I need to restore my credibility of being able to host these events. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna draw back now. It's all you. You got center stage. Thanks a lot, Boomy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so awesome. Looking forward to tell here a little bit about value for value, but in particular podcasting stuff, podcasting 2.0, and why I actually think the Lightning Network works really well for podcasting, or why it fits really well together. And why actually maybe even podcasting is one of the killer applications where we can use Lightning payments right now. So yeah, let's get into that. As John's mentioned, I worked on Albi. Albi is one of the main things that we do as a Lightning browser extension, where we try to teach the browser to talk to the Lightning Network. So basically, we generally work on, here we go, let's see the next slide. We generally work on tools to bring Lightning to the web, and basically to allow any application, especially any web application, to interact with the Lightning Network. That's obviously for payments. That's what we're going to talk about today, but also for other things like authentication with keys, or in the future maybe also managing channels and peers and managing the whole Lightning setup and so on. But that's up for a different conversation. The reason why we're excited about the web is because we have all these amazing web technologies out there that are super accessible for developers, like JavaScript, HTML5, CSS, and so on, or HTML general CSS, and so on. All these web technologies that make it easy to build applications and to build applications really fast. But it's also, the web is an accessible platform for users, because you don't need to do big installations of applications. You have apps already, you have the browser already, you visit websites and so on. And for that, it's the best distribution platform. And if these two things come together, that means a lot of innovation is happening. And this is what we see now coming to the Lightning Network. So the web is this innovation platform, and we got all the infrastructure, I would say, is slowly in place on the Lightning Network, that we can build this more high-level applications that are closer to the user, like, for example, the podcasting parts. So how do we generally do that? Our general idea is that users bring their own wallet, bring their own Lightning account, and connect that one in the web case with the Albi browser extension. And through that, Albi is basically the bridge that allows then web applications to interact with the users wallet, with the user's Lightning node. There are a bunch of connectors generally. You can use your LND node, but you Core Lightning is coming up, but you can also use, for example, an LN Bits or a Blue Wallet account for that. So it's also there quite easy to set up. But what's the concept behind that? One thing that we see currently is that a lot of the applications that integrate the Lightning Network, that's also in the podcasting space, is that we have different applications that the users are using, and all of them have embedded accounts or embedded wallets, and you need to connect that or set this up in each of these applications. And I think where the ecosystem is moving towards, and what we're actually also supporting, is that the user has this one wallet, or is in control of their wallet, which can also be multiple ones, but the user connects that wallet to different applications. So the idea is that the user brings the wallet to any application that they're using. So we don't need to convince people to use different applications just because they want to use Lightning, but basically to allow applications to integrate Lightning into whatever they're doing. But let's get to podcasting, and particular podcasting 2.0. We're going to look into that a little bit today from a Lightning point of view, and what it means for us, Lightning people, for us Lightning developer, what's happening out there. So what we have to keep in mind always is, and what I think is the greatest thing about the podcasting world, is that it's a very diverse ecosystem. We have a lot of players out there. There are a lot of specialized companies that provide different services. Like we have recording and editing tools. We have hosting companies that host and serve podcasts. We have the different podcasts player that come out in all the different forms and flavors, whatever fits best for the user. Then obviously we have all this variety of podcasters, podcasting production companies, and so on. But then also something that might not be so obvious is analytics and monitoring tools. And then obviously right now a big part is also the advertisers, or generally the monetization topic. And some of these tools, what we also have to keep in mind is users and listeners have often multiple touch points with podcasters. That means I'm not only interacting with a podcast through a podcast player when I'm listening to a podcast, but I'm also visiting a website, or potentially some of the podcasters also publish videos on various platforms of their podcasts. So it's a very broad and open ecosystem with a lot of different players, which is quite different to some of the other media media formats out there. So for example, also video is still very much owned online, I would say, by YouTube. It's one of the major platforms there. Music is also still much more owned by one of these closed platforms. But the podcasting world is here it's super open and super diverse. So there are no big central platforms, and this is actually the exciting part around there. And how does this work? How does this actually work, that we have all these different players and companies out there, but they still can interact with each other, and that still works, even though there is no central platform? And that means we need protocols, we need open protocols, and we need open standards. So protocols and standards for the win here. That's the basis that this is possible. And one of the main ones here is, I hope you all recognize this icon, is already a quite old one, which is the basis for all this podcasting part, is RSS, kind of now called as really simple syndication. What RSS does, it basically allows users and applications to access updates to websites, to information online in a standardized and especially computer readable format. Interesting again here, like a lot of the great things out there, it's actually already quite old. So the RSS format was, I think, first published in 1999, and it especially got big attention in the Web 2.0 time. That's kind of like 2005, around there, where the whole web blogging scene came up, where basically social media started. A lot of the social media things that we now know of would not have been possible with actually RSS back then, because the first ones were not the closed platforms as we have today with Facebook and so on. The first ones were weblogs, where people were publishing the content there, and where people were publishing the content not only on their own websites, but allowing these standardized content subscriptions through the RSS format. And one person that I want to mention here that everybody should always think of and remember is actually Aaron Swartz, which is a super young hacktivist who was involved in the RSS standard early on, but he did actually a lot of the things that we take for granted now, or have a big influence in the web world today. So not only RSS, but also Markdown, especially Creative Commons. He was one of the co-founders of Reddit, actually. So he generally was fighting for internet freedom and especially information freedom. So a lot of the things like that we also still see here now in the podcasting world would not be possible without like Aaron Swartz and obviously others work back then on RSS. It's actually a really sad story because he was driven basically into suicide because of an unfair US justice system that I don't want to go into now, but you all should watch the film Internet's Own Boy that talks about that story. But I think it's important to mention his work and his achievement there. Without that, this would not be possible. So let's look how an RSS feed works and looks like. Here is a very simple example. It's an XML format, machine readable, as I said. You describe a channel, you have a title, description, and so on. And all these channels then here have multiple items, which are the content items that are here described again with a title, with a link, and so on. So this is how a publisher can publish content in a machine readable format that then consumers can subscribe to. Here is a full example. Podcasting basically is exactly nothing else than an RSS feed, but with audio. Here is a full example that you see here, I think, from the Podcasting 2.0 blog. You have a few of the podcast specific elements in here, and especially down here, I hope you can see that on the screen. You have an enclosure URL, which is the MP3 file of the episode. And also here, a big thank you. There are a lot of people who have been pushing that. It's impossible to mention all of them. Without them, it would not be, we wouldn't have such a diverse podcasting ecosystem. One of the main people behind here is for sure Adam Curry, that you all should follow here on the podcast index.social link that I put in here. So he's kind of the podfather. So he was instrumental for even the word podcasting, and especially early on bringing podcasting to Apple, to iPod, that allowed early on to subscribe to audio content. And who has always been fighting, and all this whole community, the whole podcasting community has always been fighting, and especially is always still fighting for a very diverse and decentralized platform. So let's get to podcasting 2.0. So what is it actually? So what is the difference between podcasting and podcasting 2.0? So generally, podcasting 2.0 is actually just an umbrella term for a collection of initiatives to advance podcasting, and especially, as I said, to keep podcasting a very decentralized medium as much as possible. And so it describes a set of ideas and technologies to improve the podcast experience. Remember, the RSS feed initially comes from early 2000s, so it's actually quite old. It also in the podcasting world, there was never really that common goal of what the podcasting world should look like. And so this initiative now tries to describe new ideas and new technologies to improve the podcasting listening experience, and to bring new features to the podcasting world. It's an open standard, and it tries to it says that using this open standard we can compete also against and actually outcompete closed systems. So what are these ideas? So important here to remember is open standard. So the whole podcasting part and RSS feeds is always about open standards, and we have now this open standards to describe new features. So under podcasting 2.0, we have two things. First of all, the initiative also runs the podcast index, which is an open directory of podcasts. So far, because it's a very decentralized ecosystem, there were a few of the directories where you could find podcasts. One of the major ones, because also it was from Apple, because also Apple was in the podcasting game early on, so they were controlling one of the major directories, and to keep that open or make that open again and have less dependent or have less dependency on Apple. There is the podcastindex.org initiative, which is an open directory of podcasts. That's number one. And number two is the podcast namespace, which describes a collection of extensions to the RSS feed to support additional features. There are loads of them actually there. Some of them I mentioned here. So for example, transcripts. Podcasters can deliver text transcripts along the podcast episode to make the content more accessible. There are standards for chapters that podcasters can deliver chapter information along with the episode file. There are ideas to describe it's a person's tag to describe what were the guests and what were the people that were participating in an episode. There are alternative enclosures that you can not only serve an MP3 file with the RSS feed, but for example, also maybe an alternative version like a video, or maybe a high resolution or a low resolution file, or maybe even describe or provide a link to a different, not only a different file, but basically to allow a different protocol, like for example, that you can serve your podcast MP3 files through IPFS or something like that. So there are all these bunch of features and ideas to improve podcasting. But now you might ask, we're here on Bolt.fun. What the fuck? Where is Lightning? What does have to do with Lightning and the Lightning Network? And I've been saying that now a few times. The thing is protocols and standards for the win. So that's the important part. With the Lightning Network, we have now an open protocol to transfer value in a peer-to-peer fashion, like without any intermediary, without a requirement for a payment service provider. And so that kind of means, so for example, with HTTP and RSS, we transfer information, right? So we publish the information about the podcast, how you can access it, how you can download it. So that's the information part of that. And with Lightning now, we can transfer value. So we can transfer value, we can transfer money in a similar standardized way, like we transfer information with HTTP and RSS. So that's a perfect fit here for the diverse podcasting ecosystem. Because so far in the fiat world, or without an open standard for transferring value, it was always required that you have a centralized platform that facilitates the payment. So monetization was and still is really, really hard there, and monetize because of the lack of this monetization standard. There was a drive towards centralization, because there it was the only way that this big central player could facilitate the payments, meaning you needed to get both parties on the both parties on the same platform to actually do that. So you needed to get the listener and the podcaster on the same platform to be able to transfer, to facilitate the payment, to enable people to buy something from, like, let's say, a marketplace or something like that. With Lightning, we can solve this. And this is, by the way, also one reason why we see a lot of the main monetization option is advertisement, because there was just no other way. You have this rather still decentralized medium like podcasting, but there is no way to monetize it except of also transferring information, meaning having an information-based business model, meaning that advertisement is embedded into the podcast episode. So, and how does this now look like? How does Lightning now look like in this podcasting 2.0 space? We particular have here the podcast value tag. This is now where we get to the value for value concept. It describes an option to monetize content and now allow listeners to directly support podcasters. So without any of these central platforms that would be required, without any payment service providers. So it's an alternative monetization option to advertisement. And generally, value for value, I don't go into the details here now, but generally, value for value says, has a concept of play to pay, kind of, and not pay to play, meaning you don't have to pay upfront to play the episode, but you play the episode, and while playing, you're streaming value back to the podcaster. So if you perceive the value from the podcast, from the episode that you're listening to, you're sending value back to the podcaster, and now in form of Satoshis, thanks to the Lightning network, like thanks to the open protocol here. And value for value generally, independently of podcasting, fits really well to digital content, because digital content is easy to copy, easy to replicate. I mean, generally the most effort goes into, or the only effort kind of basically goes into producing the content, recording the podcast, producing the podcast, for example, but not into the distribution. Digital stuff is always easy to copy, right? So you upload it and bam, you need a bit of bandwidth, but it doesn't matter if one person or a million people listen to it. And that's the basis of why generally information wants to be free, because it just digital content can easily be copied. Because of this reproduction costs that are so low, the value for value model fits really well to digital content, because reproducing is cheap, so it actually doesn't matter that much, or you can actually deliver the content to the consumer and ask for a payment basically afterwards, through the value for value concept. But as I said, I don't go too much into the value for value idea. There are lots of resources out there. I think I have a few links in the end that describe the concept there. We focus a bit on the podcasting part. And so let's look at how this kind of works. And the flow is that a podcaster adds Lightning information to the RSS feed and publishes that feed. The listener then subscribes to that RSS feed with the player. So again, remember, completely different platforms, different tools here. Podcaster uses, I don't know, self-hosts a podcast or uses one of the podcast hosting companies, and the listener then subscribes to that feed with whatever player they prefer. And supported players now can interpret this podcast value tag and offer the listener a way to send Satoshis. This can be a one-time payment. Typically, we would call that the boost or a boostagram, and like payment streams, which are, and that's the idea there, that you have periodic streams, like every minute while you are listening to a podcast, the podcast player is automatically streaming these boosts to the podcaster. And listeners, it's not only about payments, we'll get to that in a bit, but listeners can attach messages to the payments. So it's much more than just a simple payment. Here are some of the players out there that support that. Obviously, Breeze, Fountain, and Podverse, all doing an amazing job to push this forward and to enable that for the podcasting community. And these tags that you have to add to the RSS feed are described in this Podcasting 2.0 podcast value specification. They're quite simple here. First of all, you have a podcast value tag where you say where the podcaster describes the way that a listener can send value over. That's here typically you and I think that's the main used one here. We say through type Lightning and method key send. That's the way you that's the how do you say the way we are sending over that payment and a suggested value. I have to say there are lots of that. Yeah, Dave and others have put a lot of thought in that to keep this this standard or the specification very flexible and open, right? Right now, mainly we use key send payments, but as you see here in the spec of the tag, theoretically that could also be a different method. So I think that's very future-proof. So they did an amazing job there. And the second thing that is in the RSS feed is a recipient. And it's important to note here that's not only one recipient that can be, but a multiple one. So, the amount that a listener is sending over is then split by the player automatically for all the recipients. So there is then multiple payments are done automatically to any of these recipients that the podcast is describing. So for example, if an episode has multiple guests or is done by multiple people, multiple hosts, all of these hosts can receive a split of the payment. The description here also quite simple again. It describes the name of the recipient, the type, and the address. So that's again Lightning, and the address is in the key send format. It is the Lightning nodes public key. And to support also potential custodial setups, there are custom key and custom value that would identify accounts that are sent along the payment. Anyway, again here, the only thing that you have to remember, I think it's really a flexible, easy setup, and it's really easy for any podcaster, and especially any podcast hosting application, to add support for these tags. Here's a full example that you see here. I think I took that from the Podcasting 2.0 podcast, where you see the podcast value tag describes type Lightning method key send, and has a bunch of recipients here that actually, and that's also an interesting part, not only people itself, but can also be applications. For example, here, the Boostbot or Saturn, which is an analytics application that we'll talk about later. Or here an application that is used to generate the feed, which adds a tiny fee to the value tag here. So it's quite flexible, and because it's machine readable in this standard, it can be used everywhere. So obviously, I was always talking about the players. That's the main tool that you are using as a listener. But we have multiple touch points where our user is interacting with a podcast, and all of them, we can use this information now and allow people to transfer value and send these Boostagram over. So here's a few examples that I quickly want to open here. Let's see if that works. So rss.com, for example, has it integrated, allows any rss.com hosted podcast to add these value tags. And they not only add it to the RSS feed, but also allow or embed this information in the website here, which we can interpret with Albi. And now, because I restarted my browser, I have to add my dev setup here again to show you that. Let's get back. Here we go. So Albi, as a browser extension, can interpret this and then here, for example, directly send over a few sats, 1,000 sats here to this podcast. So that's one of them. Going back here, Podverse on the web player has integrated it. So you see over here on these view where I see all the episodes, I can send over sats to the podcast. The same is also for the podcast index down here, where I can easily send over a boostagram to the podcaster just by here pressing one button. So, yep, that's, let me see what we got exactly. Podcaster adds this information once in the RSS feed, and we can use it everywhere where a user is interacting with the podcast. So because we are all coders here, let's look into some of the underlying Lightning technology behind that and how this actually works. I prepared here a little Boostagram demo here on Replit that you can follow. Just check out my profile here, replit.com/ at Bumi17 or at Bumi17/Boostagram demo, which is a small online editor, a React-based application that you can try out and directly run. Let's do that here, and I'll walk you. Yeah.
Hey, sorry. Just before you continue, you said to bring up the questions. The Reality King. I think I know who that is. Asked the question: Are Lightning payments split? Are Lightning payments split a feature available due to KeySend? Are you able to split the payments effectively?
Yeah, very good question. Really good question. Really important question. No. How this works, how these splits works, is actually that the wallet sends individual payments. So it's multiple payments that are sent. I can actually even potentially quickly demonstrate that when I send over a message here, sending over 5,000 Satoshis. That I get here now in Albi prompted multiple times. So the players or the wallet will send multiple individual payments. So it's not one payment that are split on the protocol level. It's just saying that, or the RSS feed says here, these are 5 recipients, and please wallet send over to each of those recipients the amount, and please calculate whatever percentage should be sent over to these recipients. Because I as a user, I want to send over 5,000 Satoshis. I don't even care who is behind that. I'm sending that to the podcast or to the episode, and the podcaster then says, okay, here, this is the main person that gets 90%. This is the guest that gets 10%, and so on. There are multiple payments. Let's see if that works. So I confirmed that multiple times. So these are individual payments.
So I do see kind of like a big UX problem with this, right? Because I've had a lot of people ask me about being able to split payments in their applications and whatnot, and typically, like how we can show this off currently is by pooling the funds in a custodial wallet, then splitting it out after that, so that it appears as if the user is making one transaction. But do you know if there's anything happening on the protocol level, or is that just something that's going to be have to handle on the application layer?
Yeah, I'm not aware how and if that will be able to do on the protocol level, but I don't think that's a big of a big of a problem necessarily, because it just puts also the control into the users on the user's side or on the sender's side. And then, as you say, it might be a UX problem, but UX problems can be worked on and can be solved. So, for example, in Breeze and in Fountain, your wallet is taking care of that. You basically instruct the wallet to send these payments. You confirm it once, but the wallet then automatically sends 5 or 6 payments to the recipients. So it's not that the user has to really do that manually individually. The control is in the user's wallet, and the user's wallet can do that. Like we in Albi do that too. Maybe you've seen that I added a budget here. So I instructed Albi whenever I send a payment here to this podcast, Albi can do that automatically. I don't even need to confirm that payment. So I think if I do that again here, I think I set a budget to not too high, so I need to set it what we have here. Anyway, $8. Then the payments will be sent in the background automatically.
Yeah, because we have this with Bolt Fund as well. Because now we have projects and we have kind of like multiple folks. I wonder if we could use this podcast 2.0 RSS feed kind of thing for that usage as well.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think more wallets need to support these kind of concepts, and I think we will see a lot of innovation there. That still keep the user in control, but these tools then perform annoying tasks for the user, like, for example, automatically paying or sending periodic payments and these kind of things, or even here splitting up the payments. And podcasting 2.0, I think, is a bit of a how do you say that in English? Like it's a bit ahead of things, or it's like a innovation driver here, where we can learn a lot and adopt in other cases, as you describe it, for example, in Bolt.fun, where we suddenly have multiple people and I want to upvote one of the projects, or I want to like one of the projects, and that's automatically a payment that is sent then to all the participants of this project. So these are great things that we now are able to do. But obviously, as you say, it's a UX question, and we need to solve the UX
on the application layer.
The application layer, yeah. At least right now, right? But the cool thing is we are able to do that now, right? We get to this application layer where we can think about these things.
I think with regards to monetization, last point for me, with regards to monetization and like why this value for value thing seems quite interesting, or just being able to pay for what you use. I've quoted this person to death, Roy from Breeze. He said the subscription model is kind of like, buying a whole cow for a glass of milk. And like I just love the way that this is phrased. I've mentioned it to death, but it's definitely it's the ways of monetizing, whether different services or content through this mechanism is definitely changing up, and I'm very excited about it. I'll have you continue right now. I'm going to drop back behind, and if any other questions, I'll pop up again.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. And I think the great thing I see here that we can put users in control, and that's a very different concept also now. Like it's the user who's driving the or is who's sending it, who's in control. So for example, that's also an opposite to a typical credit card payment with a subscription, where you basically allow, or you basically give access, you give the platform or the service provider access to all your funds to pull whatever money they want from it, and to pull that automatically. So there the platform is in control, whereas in our case is the user is in control, and because of that, we now can build different UXs around, and the best UX for the user in that regard. So I think that's a great chance to build new ways and new interactions. But yeah, let's go back to this quick example here that you can run here on Replit. So it's a super tiny React application that allows you to send a boostagram, just for you to see how that works. We can enter a message here. This is the recipient, as we've seen before. I just made a small UI form for that. So let's look at the code, how that works, to better understand what's going on here. So as I said, it's a React application. Everything is in the source folder here. We have an index file that only has, at this super small application, has one route that renders the app component. The app component has a bit of layout around here, and then we have the boostagram component, which has the form down here as the HTML. We have a button, and maybe I should increase the size if that potentially helps you looking at things. I don't know. Hope that's good enough now. Should close that one. So we have the button where we call the send boostagram function, and now let's look into the code, what's going on here. So if you want to send a boostagram, first of all, what is that? The boostagram is described in this blip, in this standard. Open that real quick. So it's a Lightning payment that has some attached information, and this specification here, the blip 10, describes boosts and boostagrams, and describes the JSON format that is sent along with the Lightning payment here in this TLV type. So it's a key send payment to which you attach a bit of data, and that data is described here in this specification. So what we need to do now is to create a boostagram. We basically first need to create this JSON. The specification has a bunch of required fields, like which podcast it is, which feed it is, a bunch of recommended fields, like for example, to which episode I'm sending it. But players can also decide to send more additional information with it, like for example, the application's name, some timestamp, but especially also a message from the user that is sent then to the podcaster. And in our code, because we do that on the web here, we use WebLN, but that's completely independent of how you do that. If you would do that in a native player, it would work exactly the same. In the end, you need to send here a key send payment. So for time reasons, I prepared this here. So first we have this small JavaScript object here, this JSON here, where we say this is our boost, where we send over the action. It's a boost. We send over the application's name. We send my name, the recipient's name, and especially a message here. And because we're in WebLN, details about how that works I also have in the slides, but you can refer to the WebLN guide that's here, the reference over here. So first of all, what we always need to do when we want to interact with this WebLN in the user's wallet. We have to call enable. We have to ask for permissions to do that. So in our example, we say here, first we call WebLN enable. The wallet potentially prompts the user and asks for permissions here. And then we send over this key send payment. We say the destination is the public key, which we get from this form. We send over an amount, 21 Satoshis, and as described in this blip, we send over on this custom record the stringified JSON of the boost, and we get a response here as the pre-image. So that's basically it. That's how simple it is to send over such boostagrams using WebLN here. Let's try it out. If I have this page here, hello world, bolt.fun rocks. Let's see if it works. Open the toolbar on here. Boost function will be called. So the first step is now the enable call. The application asks me if I want to send or if I want to enable this application, this website to interact with my wallet. Yes, I do that. And the second call is now here the key send payment, where I'm prompted, do I want to send over these 21 sats to the destination that we have in here? I confirm that, and payment is sent over, and we return the pre-image, like the payment receipt, basically to the application. So yeah, with these few lines of code, these things as we see here or in any of these applications can be built. Yeah, so check out this CodePen, play around with it. If you have questions, let me know. I quickly run further. Hope we still have a few minutes time. I have a few more things here to show. Because as I said, and as we've seen, is that we can add messages and other information to these payments. So we can attach data to these payment streams. So these transactions actually now become a form of engagement. So I'm not only like dropping some stupid money on the podcaster, which is great by itself that I can do that, but I can also attach more information, and it's now these transactions, these money transactions, become a form of interacting. So it's an interacting between the listener and the podcaster. And then there are things that you can do with that information, like, for example, doing analytics, which is here Saturn is doing as an example, that looks at these payment streams. Let's use one of these accounts here. This one, like Saturn specifically works with Albi, but again, it's on the open protocol of the Lightning Network. So any application that can interpret this data can do these kind of things. So Saturn looks at these payment streams and provides valuable analytics information for the podcaster. Like, for example, obviously the total amount of payments, the sats received. You can see which episodes people have been listening to and sending sats to. And then obviously you can check out, this is the one that I just sent 2 minutes ago here to this account. I can see the boostagrams, like the interactions from the listeners itself. Can do leaderboards. You can get these because it can be live, right? We have instant settlement or instant transactions here on the Lightning Network, so you can see live feeds of where these payments are coming in, and so on. Check this out yourself, play around with it. The important thing that I want to get across here is that it's no longer just stupid transactions. We basically have a form of engagement with the parties that are involved in these transactions, which hasn't been possible before that. It's just impossible to do that in a fiat world. And so, but to finish that up real quick as an outlook, can we do more? Value for value, as I said, is great, or can we do other things? What I think is great is that we have options now. This technology, these open standards, give us options to build on top of that and to do new things like value for value. But we can also do, for example, even distribute paid content with that. And we now can monetize content, or monetization no longer requires closed platforms, as I said before. Lightning enables service providers on both ends. I can use a podcast player that speaks the Lightning Network, and with whatever player that is, I can now automatically transact with whatever hosting company a podcaster is using. So those are very different tools and very different service providers on both ends. They don't need to come together at one platform and agree on one service provider like PayPal, for example, or credit cards and so on. So the Lightning Network fits really perfect in this diverse podcasting world, and interoperability is key there, because only with interoperability we are able to do these kind of things, and this is the great advantage that we as a Lightning ecosystem have and over other payment rails. And as one example, just to mention that in the end, is the LSAT protocol, which is a protocol on an HTTP level that describes a way how a client and a server can communicate and send back and forth payment information. So just very briefly, how it works is that the client can say, hey, I'm supporting Lightning payments, dear server, I want to access this file. The server can say, awesome, client, you can do that, but this file costs you, I don't know, that much amount of Satoshis. Please pay this invoice. The client can take this invoice now, pay it through the Lightning Network, take the receipt, the pre-image of that, send it back to the server as a proof of payment, and the server can validate that and now return the actual content. And because we have the standard now, you can imagine that, for example, a podcast player can do that, request the MP3 file from a server. The server can respond with a payment request. And across these different applications, we can now have interoperability, and so the player can really buy content from a server. Here's a curl example how that basically works. You see I'm accessing here an MP3 file with an header accept authenticate LSAT. So header, the server responds here with an HTTP code 402, payment required. In the HTTP header, now I additionally see now a macaroon token, and especially down here on the right, I see the invoice here, invoice LNBC and so on. That's the payment request. Once the client has paid this, it's doing the HTTP request again to the same URL, but this time it says, hey, I authenticate, I am adding an authorization header with the token, and here at the second part, this is the pre-image of the payment. So the client proves the payment, and the server now can respond with HTTP 200 successful, and responds with the actual MP3 file. So because of this protocol, now we can do all these kinds of things in an interoperable way, and we can be really creative about the apps that we want to build at, and integrate payment flows directly into applications and no longer need to require users to get on the same platform. So yeah, to finish this up, and I have some of the links here that you all should check out. Obviously, the podcast index. If you're interested in following the podcasting world, whoops, here we go. You should also check out the podcast index.social Mastodon instance that is super active, where a lot of this podcasting 2.0 conversations is happening. Here are the specs for the blips and so on. Fountain has an amazing podcaster guide here. And obviously check out LSAT and WebLN as tools to integrate into applications. And with that, I would say that's about it that I have prepared. Are there any further questions, actually?
What about the things that you haven't prepared for yet, though?
What do you want to know?
No,
anything that we should look into that? I mean,
everything else.
I can keep talking about it for hours if you want to hear more about that. So,
you know,
a lot of there's so much stuff happening. It's unbelievable, and we barely scratched the surface of the things that are possible here. So, yeah, we can go on.
Well, yeah, we'll do a couple minutes. Just there's no other questions, but I like to chit chat with you. I think very early days of Albi, when we were talking about like some Ellen URL stuff. I think one example that we were looking at was you remember the SoundCloud comments that would happen at certain points of the time tracking, and you were mentioning it's not just the transaction, it's the relationship now that you can have. Have you seen examples of that? I don't know if you went through it, but like, have you seen examples of that kind of like player with the comments coming in there?
Here, let me see. Check this out. Because, as you say, you can do that. That's the nice thing. And here in Saturn, and René built that actually. If I go into, I should have showed that actually. I'm happy that you bring this up.
That's the important part.
If I go, exactly, that's the exciting part. So I completely missed that. So yeah.
Well, for me.
But yeah. So yeah, no, but you can go into the episode and you can now definitely analyze this metadata or this information that players can voluntarily send over. And as in SoundCloud streaming sets over, and where people were were sending these Boostagrams, right? So here got a Boostagram in here. I see that down here. You clearly saw it in the beginning. It's got a bit more boring. It seems like at the end, where only like 20, 25-ish people were left at the end. But yeah, so you can you can display. I think you can do much more. Like, this is one example, right? So this is where now the creativity needs to come in, and we need to think about, like, okay, what do we do with that? How do we visualize that? Yeah. So
yeah, well,
this is one of the examples.
So I'm hoping to see a widget that someone could embed on their websites. I'm getting a little feedback, but can you hear me? Yeah, I think we have a little bit of a lag going on.
You muted me? Okay. Does it work?
Arvin says, you know what they say, so there we go. I think that summarizes it. The Reality King says, you mentioned podcasting 2.0 can support video as well as audio. Is podcasting 2.0 extendable for live streaming as well? You're muted. You're muted.
I'm muted. Why I'm muted? There is actually a live stream tag. I'm not sure how it's described there, how to name it, in the these podcasting 2.0 ideas that also allow podcasters basically to send a ping to the subscribers and saying, "Hey, I'm going live. You can listen now in." So yes. Podcasting 2.0 can be used and hopefully will be used more for live streaming events too in the future. Yeah. And with the alternative enclosures, then potentially also for video streams,
With the stuff that we're doing for Bolt Fun, again, this example, and we could probably come up with other kinds of examples where there's multiple people who are part of something, and given a duration of time, this kind of like facility, this pattern doesn't necessarily have to be for media. It seems like it could be just for maybe if we wanted to do something like a subscription, or maybe for a salary of someone in a payroll application or something. Can these things potentially, or how could these things be used in the background? Or how can the wallet make those payments in the background? Can it encompass like a server to server kind of model with this, for instance?
I mean, exactly. That's the thing where we have this protocol, and these protocols we can build tools around. So in the end, it's then just code that we need to write to use these protocols and to do these kind of things. So for example, the LSAT specification describes a way how a server communicates the payment request to a client. So this is kind of the standard that we can use. The client cannot do anything with this payment request, automatically pay it, and so on. And the server can decide if it gives access to the client. And so yes, using these technologies, we can build something like streaming payments is the one that we do here, but can do that automatically in the background. You could write an application that says when that basically mimics a bit of a subscription model, right? So, but the subscription model is not a pull model from the receiver side, but it's a push model from the sender side. I configure my wallet to send periodic payments, monthly, weekly, I don't know, by the minute. Streaming is not nothing else, and a subscription more or less where the time frame is a different one. I can configure these wallets to do these kind of payments. Exactly. Yeah.
Mark mentions that the PeerTube Lightning plugin in the Bolt Fun Legend of Lightning tournaments supports Boostagrams currently. So I think this is you could probably you're aware of PeerTube and the stuff with Bitcoin TV and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because exactly that should be mentioned too here, of course. And it's a great showcase, or it's a great example where you actually see this is using the as much as possible the same standard, these boostergram formats as described in the blip, for a different media format now on a different platform like PeerTube for videos, and supports the live streaming exactly in the same format as it's done from podcast players, from audio players. So
yeah, I've dropped the link there.
Thank you. Awesome.
For the project page, PeerTube Lightning on Bolt Fun. I guess what I was getting at is that, if there's an audio and video tag specifically for podcasting 2.0, like why isn't there a project tag as well? But then it's no longer podcasting at that point, right? So maybe some future of the spec could be a bit more generalized for those kind of use cases. I guess those use cases will have to become more apparent and implemented for that that kind of change to happen, though.
Yeah, even so, that's what I tried to say in the beginning. Podcasting also builds on RSS, And RSS is basically just a syndication for like a really simple syndication or whatever, to publish content in a machine readable format. Initially, it was for really text content. So already the podcasting says now, okay, we use it for audio files, because we wanted, the history there actually is also that we wanted to subscribe to more or less radio shows, right? So back then, you remember it was the early 2000s, the internet connections were rather slow. So it took a long time to download a few hours radio show through the internet, through your dial-up modem. So you could have these reader applications or these player applications that download the file in the background, that first of all, that subscribe to the RSS feed, download the file in the background, and then the user can listen to it whenever they want on the go on their iPad, for example. But the basis is that we have this machine readable format, and obviously we can describe other things there too. There is a lot of stuff happening actually in the music world there too, also to describe, like, I don't know, like albums and things. I'm not too familiar with that, but to describe music albums in a similar way. And why not projects also, right? So why not need to see how that makes sense. But basically, it's a way to communicate information that then can be interpreted by a client, and the client can perform actions with that and can do things with that. Visualization is one, but then obviously now also payments. And I really believe that one thing, the other way around, if we would have the Lightning Network, I don't know, here 10, 15 years ago, where like RSS, or also before the HTTP spec itself was invented, the web world would look very different, because we would have these monetization options for everybody who's publishing an RSS feed. We didn't have this back then, so we had to go to other things, and that led to more centralized platform in that sense. But now we can bring these value streams to these open information standards and can build these kind of things. So I think also we mentioned PeerTube before. As an alternative to YouTube, now suddenly PeerTube can have payments on an open standard, and can build also the right incentive models for creators to publish their content there, and also for consumers basically to consume it and pay for it and support their creators that publishing there. Which wasn't possible before, because there would only have been advertisement possible, but nobody is advertising on a small PeerTube instance, right? So
yeah. I think thought, come back please. Another example of this kind of like payment splitting kind of thing works for what do you call it? Something like BTC maps, right? Where you have like a bunch
for what?
BTC maps, where they have a bunch of contributors and stuff like that, and then it can get split there. It's like, hey, let me donate to you're right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds
exactly.
Like
that's an amazing thing. Totally. Yeah. Bam. I don't know. We need to reach out
Wikipedia.
to
Wikipedia. Even.
Yeah. So imagine, you read this Wikipedia article that gives you a lot of value, that gives you, you learn all these things. We all use Wikipedia to look up things, right? And then I just drop some sets, and it gets sent over to the different people who basically were writing this article. And I don't need to know who those are, on what part of the world they are, where they want to receive the money, and so on. I don't even care. So I'm dropping the money and on a protocol layer, and can send this over. Yeah. And this now suddenly is this incentive model. BTC Map can incentivize with that people to contribute, adding new entries there, or even update entries to check out if the entry is still accepting Bitcoin in this case or not, and so on, right?
Yeah, and the gamification can happen where like Wikipedia might decide or BTC Map might decide by being the first one to add a entry or a correct entry, you get like this percentage. But then if you are doing like some different kinds of activity or different kinds of update on the entry, then you get like a certain proportion of the rest, right? And then, but then that becomes dynamic where people can kind of like try to figure out like, oh, let me contribute a bit more, you know. So then again, I think we spoke about this, playing with the payment flows and the incentives of your application. It that's the next layer of innovation for Lightning on the web or just Lightning applications. When you remove the wallet, right? Because you don't have to develop that fully, like Breeze or Albi or whatever allows you to just like not think about that. Now you can think about those incentives and payment flows and have it create this circular economy within your digital platform.
The great thing is these platforms or these applications that we are building now, they no longer have to be in the payment flow, which is also a complicated part. They are orchestrating the payment flow. So you need to handle money. You can really build, let's say, even a client-side application, host that on a static, on Netlify or something like that, that orchestrates now a payment between the visitor and some other person, like whoever edited an article or whoever edited something to OpenStreetMap and so on. So because it's in the end just code. So, and before that, you would need to basically take the money from the visitor through a credit card. You would have it, you need to hold it, you need a payment service provider for that, which is already hard to get if you're just a random developer out there and not a company. And then you would need to pay that out to the other party. Much more complicated, right? All this is gone now because we have a few simple APIs that we can use. So
yeah, I still think one of the challenges is like the perfect application that demonstrates a circular payment flow within it, where even though you are not the custodian, you still make money somehow, right? We haven't figured this out yet with Bolt Fund either. I think recently we also came into this little UX issue where we need people to put in their Lightning address in order for them to get the sats. But a bunch of people were signing up and not putting it in. Right. So we're like, the site is kind of broken. So what we decided to do, we just had to default to the Bolt Fund Lightning address for the meantime. And maybe that's the way we can monetize and then try to like distribute it back again for people who do have their Lightning address there or to other hackathons and stuff. It's but yeah, figuring out that entire payment flow while remaining not custodial, while also kind of like playing with the incentives to kind of like get everyone a big question as well is like getting people to understand the incentives also, right? This is also a very difficult thing to communicate to folks. It's like, I'm just used to paying and leave me alone. Now you kind of have to engage with your community and get them interested and excited about, you know, interacting with it. But anyway.
Well, and you have to people have to understand that actually on Bolt.fun, even though I'm doing that on Bolt.fun, I'm actually paying directly the recipient, right? I'm there, whoever wrote the article, whoever put up the project. So this is a very different thing. Before that, it was always going to the website. And even think about journalism. So if I buy an article, typically I buy that in a newspaper. I'm never buying it directly from the author. So, but now we could actually build these kind of things where you have the platform for content, but the payment flows directly to the author. But it's a very different concept, and people have to understand it, right? And one thing to add here also is getting back to the split payments, and all these things is very early, right? So we have to figure out these flows, and even if people want these kind of things or not. So we will see that. So we need to do all these experiments that we're doing right here, right now, right? But potentially these split payments, as you said before, can be an option for you to monetize it, or for the application that orchestrates the payment to do that. And that's what's happening in the podcasting 2.0 world too. So the players can, or even the hosters on any side, they can add a split to the as a recipient to the RSS feed. So in our case on bolt.fun, we could say, if I'm voting up, I'm choosing the amount that I want to send over. I want to send over 5,000 satoshis, but it's gonna be happening 2 payments. One of the 5,000 satoshis is, or like let's say 4,900 satoshis are sent to the actual author, and 100 satoshis are sent to bolt.fun. So.
Yeah.
But these are the challenges, exactly. So this is the question: how do we now build incentive structures for the developers, but also for the content creators and so on in these applications in a potentially gamified way and so on. So yeah, this is where we have to be creative now and try things out. And it's also, you asked for the spec before, or if that's going to be happening in on-chain. I think a lot of the work is always comes from a need, right? We cannot think of these things before they are there. We need to, we find problems now and see, hey, it would be awesome if we can do that with Lightning, and maybe not in Bolt 11 or Bolt 12 we do that, but in Bolt 13 or whatever it's gonna be. We can improve. It's all software, so it might take some time, but if there is a need, people will solve it, right?
Yeah, I think there's like just so many things that I want to design and develop. I get to play around with. I was talking with Ed today, and he said that he was kind of disappointed that he's not able to hack on anything. So we need someone else to host a Legends of Lightning or a tournament, so then we could also play around with all the cool stuff happening. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Bumi. Metro Boomin, really enjoyed your presentation. Thanks for taking the time out. You guys are doing some awesome work at Albi, obviously, and in the podcasting 2.0, it's nice to see developments happening there. It's I think RSS.com is also using the podcasting 2.0 spec, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, RSS.com is one of the bigger hosters that implements it, that allows people actually to connect an Albi wallet in that case. But there are many out there, and it's a growing space. It's really exciting. I mean, I barely understand the surface of it. Probably there are all these amazing people out there that push it out. So Adam, Dave, especially, for example. I mean, Roy from Greece is doing a lot of things there. Check out the podcast index.social Mastodon instance. You will be blown away what's going on there. So yeah, those are the great people there. Yeah.
Hey, and my background's more branded than yours. What's going on? This is the honeycomb behind there, the Albi honeycomb.
It totally is. Yeah. The only thing I managed to do here is, maybe you see that over here, right? It's super tiny if you look.
All right. Thank you so much, Bumi. And I'll just ask you one last question. You know what they say, right?
You know what they say. Exactly. Take care. See you next time. See you online.